The question, I suppose, next is moving from smart cities to sensible and cognitive ones. To take that conversation forward, please welcome once again Francois Candelon, who's the Managing Director and Senior Partner at BCG Henderson Institute. To him and his panel, a very warm welcome.
Good. So, very nice to be with you. Hope you had a great lunch and a great exercise. So, yes, from smart to sensible and cognitive cities. The question I will ask to my panel and what we will try to see is whether this is just a new buzzword or what is the true difference between them. So let's start about a bit the definition of cognitive cities. And we have with us Ahmed, who is a venture capitalist and who is advising the US federal government on cognitive digital twin. So as you coined the concept of cognitive digital twin, I would like to better understand how you define a cognitive city and how different it is from a smart city.
Yes, thank you, Francois. Yes, so today we have a lot of smart cities here in the kingdom, in Egypt, and elsewhere. And what smart cities do, they collect data. That's all. Then on top of the data, we have some applications to do what we want to do. The cognitive city will be completely different. The cognitive city should be able to collect knowledge, not data. It means that cognitive city will be able to collect the data, put it in the right context, given that the cognitive city will have to be aware of itself, its responsibilities, its environment, the people living there, the demands of the people, the dynamically changing demands of the people living there, and the assets, the physical assets, transportation, water, whatever infrastructure exists. So the core of the cognitive city will be able to be aware of all of this, collect the data, put the data in the right context, generate knowledge. This knowledge will be used either by the city itself, I mean the city, the digital or the cognitive digital twin of this city, or the humans, or the other physical assets. So it will be a cognitive environment. And just to clarify this, Francois, the definition of cognition, it is a process of acquiring knowledge and understanding this knowledge. I would add to cognitive city, collect knowledge, understand the knowledge, and take some actions or decisions itself. So this is major difference. Of course, this is easy said, but technologically speaking, as technologists, there will be a lot of technological challenges, and I'm sure we'll help. We'll get there. Yeah.
We'll touch that. So Fabio, you're a researcher at MIT at the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. So how do you make then a city cognitive? And to a certain extent, how can we go from smart to cognitive cities?
I think building on what you said, I think one of the challenges is how to get data that's not structured, not only from social media, but let's say that here in Riyadh, the smell of the city is different from the smell of Boston and different from the smell of Paris. So how we can understand cities from the cultural aspects, from the non-data-driven aspect of the cities. And I think this is very important. Otherwise, we'll be building smart cities, cognitive cities, anything where we had data easily available. Otherwise, we're gonna lose, I think, the most important part of what brings us together, which is this culture.
Yes, and we see in German maybe, and you know, so Ahmed was talking about the need to collect data, making the difference between collecting data, analyzing data, understanding them in the right context. So you're the CEO of Platinum Technologies. So in a world that is becoming with more and more sensors and so on, how do you feel? What can be done there?
So even as we build upon the idea of connectivity, we also think about this other component that smart cities and cognitive cities are also carbon neutral. So whether it be a combination of hydrogen, solar, wind, that's important. But what I would propose here is that there's a component of carbon that you don't want to eliminate, and that's the human, right? So when we look at it from that perspective, I think about how as technology becomes more pervasive and it can generate a conformist mentality because you're conforming to the technology that's presented to you. And as a result, humans are highly adaptable, but as we build the infrastructure for these cognitive cities, what I would say is that we also need to be thinking about the technology, the systems, the applications, and ensure that they are also highly adaptable, because what we don't want to do is lose the culture, the norms associated with the individuals that are going to be either migrating to these cities or starting families in these cities.
So maybe we can get it with the cognitive digital twin. So we are fortunate to have Sue as well with us, who is the Chief Digital and Strategy Officer at NEOM. So concretely, how do you make the difference between cognitive and smart cities at NEOM?
Yeah, the good news is that...
Oops, your mic is off.
The good news?
No.
No.
Hello?
Yes.
Working, sorry. So the good news is that NEOM is a greenfield environment. We don't start with legacy. And I think the best that you get right now is real-time asset visualization. And we talked about this last night when we were at dinner, right? Which is, even if you get real-time visualization, you still have data silos. We were talking about the Bay Area having 28 different transit agencies. So the goodness of NEOM is that we get to start with cognitive prediction. We have a program called Project NEOS that allows us to build a citywide operating system. What does that allow us to do? I think a lot of the panelists touched on this. It allows the applications to speak to each other. It allows data to flow between citywide services. But the most important thing is that it provides an open data ecosystem that accelerates the innovation of net new services. And I think that's the difference between a cognitive city and what we've done in the past.
Yeah, yes, and I would like to come to you, Hassan, because as you said, NEOM is the city of the future, but you deal with the present. And what does it mean for, let's say you are the CIO of the public transit agency in California. So what does it mean for a city, let's say San Francisco, currently to become cognitive?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Francois, and just want to say this is an honor and privilege for myself to be here, and I'm really excited to be part of this whole program, thanks to Sadaya. But going back to the question, I think what Sue was talking about, I guess I have the sort of I don't know, it's advantage or disadvantage because I'm dealing with the legacy infrastructure. So for us, making a transition from a city to a smart city to a sensible or to a cognitive city, it's a journey. Just like all of us have gone through this journey, and I feel myself, part of that generation where, some of us started in 90s, our professional lives. I still remember the big brick, cellular, analog, CDMA phones, and now we have phones sitting in our pockets. So that whole transition from analog to digital, I use that analogy very similarly for the smart cities, transition. So we have our own significant challenges. We are making more step-by-step transition from where we are seeing the mission-critical needs of the citizens and how we make that transition, leveraging the technology, leveraging the data, leveraging the AI technology, and that's how we are making the transition. So for us, is it going to be a digital transition in San Francisco, Oakland, 0 to 1 switch? It is not. So it's a journey, it's a governance. The good news is the data is the digital glue that really ties up all together, as Sue was talking about, and Ahmed just touched on the topic. So we are making, I guess, transition into that. We are all coming out of a COVID situation. Just to give you a perspective from the user case perspective, case that during COVID, we launched our contactless payment system for public transit. Because of the whole COVID and the touching, challenges, and that was very successful. Our riders were asking, they need to know that how many people or how many riders are on the bus. We launched the real-time information to let them know that how many passengers are on the bus, or on the train. So a lot of these technologies and a lot of these things really come out due to the need of the time of the COVID. So that's how I guess I see we are making this transition.
Yeah, so very, very good. But I have one question once more, because I remember I've been trying, I used to live in China where there were many smart cities. Some of them were successful, let's say, a few of them. But one of the key issues was not just about the fact that it was mostly a techno-push, much more than, let's say, a use case pool, but there was a problem of governance as well, and the ability of a solution provider basically to replicate and to productize its solution, because everything, the governance, you had different stakeholders, decision-making was very complex and so on, and it was making it unsuccessful. So I haven't allocated this question to anyone, so does someone take it or want to take it, or no one?
I think he's the best person to answer.
So I guess from the decision-making perspective, of course we have the, we have cities, we have counties, we have a state, and then we have the federal government. So pretty much, we have the, I guess in certain areas, we have the freedom or the liberty to make the decisions, but all the decision-making has to be done based on really the customer's feedback and the citizen feedback. Even, like, just to give you a very simple example, from the fare policy perspective, that, how much we're gonna charge from point A to point B, is it going to be $2 versus $2.50? Even that fare policy by our city ordinance and by our transit agency, we have to take it back to our riders. We have to take it back to our citizens. They provide that feedback. Ultimately, the decision is made by the publicly elected officials. They are the one who made the decision, but we have to engage our riders and our citizens in this whole decision-making process.
So maybe, German, coming back to you, in a sense that more and more we see that there is a need to have different ecosystems. Yeah. And mobility, education, security. So how can technologies like AI help in defining and managing these ecosystems in a cognitive city?
Yeah, so when I think about that question that you asked just now, the things I look at are, as we move forward and we decide how we want to build these new cities, and there's going to be a migration of some sort to these cities, and the thing I look at is what's left behind. And I talked about that just now, where we talk about what's left behind from the perspective of, you've got legacy infrastructure, you have people who may not have the either social ability or financial ability to be able to move, and you still have to be able to implement technologies that will serve that need. So there's absolutely two pieces to this. There's one, we should always consider these grand ideas for the implementation of these new technologies, but there should always be a modest investment as well back into that area of infrastructure for folks that might not be able to have that mobility.
So Arsene, I will be back to you on, because we will now move to, let's say, a kind of a use case, which is urban mobility. So back to you. A question on how do you see traffic management systems help to prepare for future urban mobility?
Well, I think the traffic management systems play a very critical role in the whole mobility perspective. So again, it depends on which geographical area you're talking about. Riyadh would probably have maybe a very centralized, different solution. In San Francisco Bay Area, you're talking about the service like we provide. There are 27 different transit agencies. So just like we provide in dozens of different cities, each city has their own traffic management system. Most of them are driven by vendors, by technology, depending on the funding and the governance. So I think there is a significant need for standardization, for the interoperability of these different systems. Public transit, we are actually measured based on our performance. Our performance is on-time performance. My rider expects if a bus or a train needs to come at 5 p.m., the bus or train needs to be there at 5 p.m. No matter what the traffic conditions are, no matter what the traffic flows are, I mean, some of you may be in the area of San Francisco Bay, San Francisco, Oakland. We are not that huge. We are 49 square mile, San Francisco, 53 square mile, Oakland. There are always construction, digging, evacuation, something is happening, which may disrupt the services we deliver. So calculating and measuring all those things and leveraging the data, the historical, and coming up with the AI-based prediction model, a lot of those challenges are there, and working with the cities and municipalities to make sure that we are keeping in tight communication on the traffic management systems.
So Fabio, you've been leading a project of autonomous vehicles, actually autonomous boats, in Amsterdam. I would be interested to know what the status is there, but beyond that and leveraging your experience, what do you think about autonomous vehicles more broadly and in the way they can help in urban mobility in a cognitive city?
So I think 2 points. First, about Robot. Robot is a project that we developed in Amsterdam. In Amsterdam, when they come to us and say, oh, we have this project about implementing autonomous cars in the city. And we said, but look, you have 100 kilometers of canals. Why don't we repurpose these canals to have them performing what they used to perform in early 20th century? Let's bring back the boats. So we developed these autonomous boats called Robot, and they are moving people, but most of it, they are actually removing trash from the city. So I think rethinking autonomy, not only for what we first think they could do, like moving people, but other uses for the legacy infrastructure that we have. But for autonomy in general, I think we need to I was in another panel discussing yesterday the point that if we remove drivers from the seat, we might be saving thousands of lives every day. So I think autonomy is something that every city should bet heavily.
Yes, but as it was said by your fellow from MIT, there is a need to have some social license to a certain extent to operate there. And it's not always, the consensus is not always there. So the need to build it is really critical.
But perhaps what we should think critically is that our social license to allow humans to drive is too loose. We're perhaps letting the wrong people or without the best skills to drive a very important weapon.
So, Sue, I was seeing you nodding when I was talking about the social license. Any example in your day-to-day life?
I mean,
at NEOM?
Well, no, just from a value proposition perspective to the city, I think it is important that we have all this automation, but that we recognize that human experiences is greater than always optimizing for efficiency. I think that's a very important point. So we use technology, but we need to be able to respect choice. And from my perspective, this means building a foundation of trust and making sure that people have ownership and transparency over their data.
And I think that when you say trust, it's not just in the way it's trusting as well the systems. Many people, when I discuss about autonomous vehicles, are telling me, yes, but what if the systems is hacked? What happens? So I think there are the questions about cybersecurity and so on that are really critical. And I wanted to check with you, Ahmed, if based on your cognitive digital twin, there are maybe some other either use cases or how could it help, let's say, urban mobility?
Yes. I think just to go back to what Fabio said, I think most of the problems and the challenges we have in creating the cognitive cities do not lie on the technology side. I think it is architecture question. So when I will go back when maybe some of the audience heard about the digital twin, and most of the implementation of digital twin failed. Why? Because it's just data collection and some analytic tools on top of it. It didn't fulfill the business expectations. When I introduced the cognitive digital twin in 2016, I meant really to be cognitive, to be aware of itself, to not data-driven, to be knowledge-driven. So to create a knowledge-driven city, not data-driven city, would mean an architecture which be flexible enough, extensible enough in the future to accommodate or to make use of any new technologies, whatever artificial intelligence technologies, intelligence sensing, or whatever other technologies. So once we solve this
But
architecture...
what are the bricks that are missing at the moment to make it happen for real?
I think it is the architecture mindset is missing because, of course, when we build a team, most of us coming from artificial intelligence or data analytics or traditional IT or traditional system, city systems like Ahsan, for example, we are coming from a traditional mindset. I think we have to move from traditional mindset to a cognitive mindset, which means not data-driven, it is knowledge-driven, it is what we call data-driven AI. No, I say AI-driven data. When I collect data, for example, for a cognitive city, I'm not going to collect every data. Every piece of data about the city and the people in the city would be a nightmare. Where are the data centers which will accommodate all of this data over the lifetime of the city? But if I say, I need a task, and for this task, I need these data sets, I need those knowledge and domain expertise, combining those together, giving them to the cognitive core of the city, which so maybe you meant the operating system of the cognitive city, will enable. Also, you mentioned, Sue, also the application. So we talk applications today. I want a cognitive city not to have any application. They decide, the core, the operating system, will decide for me, Ahmed, what I need now, based on my current demands now, and offer me the service. Yeah. What service will be defined dynamically, not statically, like what we have today from smart cities.
But with then some philosophical questions about your free will, about what you get. So
exactly,
it's another angle.
Yeah.
Coming back a bit, sorry.
No, we're good. Mm-hmm.
No, sorry,
okay.
I misinterpret.
Yeah.
Coming to another topic, which is the trade-off between security, privacy, and so on, which is an important one. I wanted maybe, Sue, to see how do you deal with it? Many cities, in particular in Asia, where CCTV programs or whatever. So how do you deal with this trade-off to try to get to break the compromise?
Yeah, I think to your point, I think intelligent video systems are a part of our connected world. Computer vision is something that we're heavily investing in. And I think what we're doing now, the question then becomes, what do you do with that data? So what we're investigating is anomaly detection techniques plus edge computing. He was talking about the architecture. Mm-hmm. And I think that gives us a certain level of balance between security and privacy as we process more and more data at the edge.
No.
Yeah.
And please go ahead.
Yeah, just I wanted to add to Sue, I think today all of us redefined our data privacy. Yeah. And I think most of our data are somewhere with bad people and good people. I think in a cognitive city, we'll be able, and I expect this from the underlying architecture and the operating system of the cognitive core, which I call, is to be able to protect me, to use kind of common sense like today. If I see you in a situation, and I say, no, this is private time for Francois, leave him alone now. I think a cognitive system will be able to take such decisions or, for example, detect anomaly. I expect from a cognitive city core to detect anomalies from inside the cities or outside the cities. So making our architecture, cognitive architecture, will help increase, even enhance the data privacy more than today, enhance the cyber security of the city, enhance the physical security of the city as well. If we get the architecture done right.
Maybe, German, based on that and because it's always very often so that the new technologies multiply as well the fields where there is criminal activity, there are questions about cyber security. So I know that at Platinum Technologies, how do you deal with this?
Yeah, and just to add on what Ahmed said, I think one of the important constructs of this relationship between the person and artificial intelligence is going to be, is it trusted? Is it easily explainable? Right? And as Ahmed said, do I feel protected? And in a sense, there needs to be at least a feeling of choice that I've been able to make that's associated with that decision, because ultimately we do believe that there's going to be a higher level of efficiency associated with being able to digitalize cities and our economy, et cetera. Now, to your question on cybersecurity.
But sorry, isn't there a kind of an oxymoron between, let's say, deep learning and explainability? To a certain extent, here you are talking about a trade-off, which is a trade-off about, let's say, accuracy, explainability. What do I choose? And what are the ways to choose?
Well, at a high level, I would say is that the more data the system has, the better and more precise it can be. But you need me to give you that data. You need me to make that accessible. So even when you just look at simple privacy statements these days, when you look at either a site that you go to or an application that you use, it's not written in this legal terminology. They still have it, but it's written very plainly so an individual can say, okay, I'm willing to consent to giving you all of this information that I probably wouldn't, because I don't understand what I'm giving away and I don't understand what the risk is to me. So I think that is what I mean when I talk about explainability and the trade-off that's associated with it, so that we can better train our systems to be useful to the citizen.
Okay, good.
I just want to say one thing.
So, please.
If I just want to piggyback on that thought process what German was talking about, I think the government has the responsibility, of course, from the privacy perspective. Of course, we have to build the security, the physical security, the cyber security to protect the lives and the well-beings of our citizens and residents. But at the same time, improving the security does not mean that I give up my privacy. So along those lines, like German was talking about, from the consent perspective, all the technical jargons, you see, like, I'm getting an order from Uber Eats, I have to turn on my location-based services to give up all my information, all my likeness and dislikeness about what kind of food I pick. That data, to me, is very critical. It's very personalized. Now, having said that, I think, for example, GDPR in Europe, and recently in California, we have California Consumer Privacy Act passed recently. We have to educate and we have to empower our users and our citizens to know, when they are signing up, what they are giving up. But at the same time, making the private sector, the entities, the service providers accountable and responsible to make sure that they can also generate that specialized, personalized data, what's being collected through either the mobile devices or through the browsers, because everything I do, as far as the interaction is concerned with internet, is stored in the browser, somewhere in the data, and that data being sold to many, many different entities. So as a citizen, I have the right to know who is really taking my data. So I think that's where the balance comes in, to make sure that we have a very strong, regulatory framework in place. Just to give you an example, like, on our buses, we have the mobile ticketing system, we pay that, so that will tell me your identity. But we make sure that there are barriers between that information and the other information is completely separate. So we cannot really mix the two systems. So I would know that Francois was traveling on line 51A from Fremont to San Francisco.
So as I'm a European, so when you talk about regulatory framework, you speak to my heart. So maybe on another topic, which is about the cities and how to make them more resilient. And I'm talking in particular about, let's say, climate at the moment. So maybe, Fabio, any example on how technologies can make cities more resilient, more sustainable?
I would give two examples. One of them is general, is about legacy infrastructure. So I think we should not take it for granted, but also we should not remove legacy infrastructure as if everything that's new technology will solve our problems. And I'll give you the practical example. A few years ago, so every time that you go to the toilet and you flush, whatever you do for us is data. And what I mean by that is that we can have lots of information about public health from your pee and your poo. But how to get this information? So we developed small robots that we deploy throughout the sewage system in different countries, here nearby in Kuwait as well. And we were detecting bacteria, viruses, salt consumption. So I think deploying new technologies and acquiring data from systems that sometimes we take for granted and as if all the new solutions will come from new technologies, I think it's a way to choose the wrong path. So reimagining what we have should be the first step.
Ahmed, you wanted to say something maybe?
Yes. So I think cognitive city, especially on the digital side of the city, the people who will live there will be really lucky, because you are in the hands of intelligent digital technologies everywhere, even including the physical part like robots and other systems. And when we talk today about sustainability or resilience, first thing we say, okay, what about the process? How are we doing things? I think cognitive cities will be engineered to be upfront sustainable and resilient. But the process is not enough. There will be intelligent technology, sensing, measuring, comprehending what is going on in real time, and even recommending new lifestyle, recommending new ways to do things for us as individuals, as families, as city, as a government. So we will be in a completely different world. I say again, a cognitive core of a city helping us all to live in a kind of environmentally friendly, sustainable, resilient city.
So just
may I give
please.
A provocation? But for instance, this conference, so it's very nice that we are all here together, right? But how many of the activities that we have here we could have done over Zoom? Meaning that all the people who flew to Riyadh, if we have stayed home, we have saved tons and tons of CO2. So I think one of the things that we'll need to find very soon is a balance between a long-haul type of city, the 15-minute city, the 0-minute city, where we don't need to go anywhere and access everything that we need. So I think somehow it's counterintuitive to fly 9,000 kilometers to talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
Partially. So it is provocative, but what I get from you as well is that there are things that cannot be done if we are not together.
Exactly.
Let's make sure that when we do it, we focus on these elements.
And another example, we are talking about technology. All of you probably, if you're similar to my opinion, enjoyed more the magic show that we had before than the talk. Because why? So we have all this new technology.
But they are wrong. They are wrong because it's a great talk.
No, so, but then, and somebody comes here and does magic out of this cool technology. So I think this experience we can only have here.
Good. So maybe, and to finish this panel, each one of you, in less than 1 minute, what is, in your opinion, the most important thing to prepare the cities for the future? Hassan.
Well, I guess from my perspective, the bottom line is the quality of life. Am I deploying technology, sensors, IoTs, all the good stuff, autonomous vehicles? I can have all those good things, but am I really improving the quality of life of my citizens and my customers by deploying all those various technologies? Am I improving their experience from the touch point they interact with the cities? Those are the core objectives and the outcome I'm expecting from these smart cities.
German.
I would say that as these opportunities are created with the growth of these cognitive and smart cities, that we don't forget about the legacy infrastructure and people as well, because you create that digital divide of the haves and have-nots.
Fabio.
People will not move to cities because of cognitive technologies, but they will move to cities because of the magic that happens only in cities.
Ahmed.
To be honest and to be provocative a little bit, I have no concerns about the people who live in those cities. They are lucky, and I hope I will be one of them. I think there will be different mentality, different mindset, different people than you and me. But what we have to do today is to get the digital architecture done right and seamlessly and nicely integrated with the physical architecture of the city, and they can grow together over time, digitally and physically, in a nice way that even the people will see later on that the cognitive city is a stupid city. I don't want to live in this city because I, as a human being, have more expectations than what the most advanced technologies are giving me today. So the growth, the joint growth of the digital and physical architecture would be a key.
And if you have no concern for people in the cities, maybe
No,
we
they-
might have
like-
concerns for the ones who are not in the cities.
No, because 50 years ago, the people,
Yeah.
50 years ago would have said, these poor guys, you have computer vision everywhere, you have cell phones and browsers, and we know where you are and so on. But now,
So we need to give the word to Sue.
No worries. So build out your digital infrastructure, build out that cognitive infrastructure, data to information to knowledge to wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think being able to collect your insights, keep that as wisdom and pass it on for generations to come in the city.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So thanks a lot to everyone. Thank you for attending this panel, and hope you enjoyed it. So, let me welcome the next speaker, Yu Sing Kang.